This very important motion. I'll not repeat what has been stated in terms of the devastating effects of this crime called mischaracterized as cattle rustling. An important thing I would like to see, my Your Honor, Mr. Speaker, is that we need to locate this thing in the law. Cattle rustling is mischaracterized to the extent that even the law enforcement cannot deal with it. It should be in the penal code, and the same sanctions that apply to robbery with violence should apply to this particular activity. It's robbery with violence, nothing else. People die, a lot of property is destroyed, and people are snatched their property. So, to give it a sexy title like cattle rustling is really a way of getting away from the real issue. There's no relationship that used to happen in the traditional days when somebody could raid maybe with a spear and whatever to steal a few cattle for balanced issues. I don't deny that there's a cultural dimension to it in certain areas, because when I was in Southern Sudan some time back, and I was dealing with the Catholic missionaries, I came across one missionary with a story that goes like, he used to have a very, very dedicated choir master, who was a young man who had gone to school. The guy was not married. Then one evening, the guy turns up in war regalia and comes to the priest and asks the priest for a blessing in the group of warriors. Then the priest asks, what is all this about? He said it was time for him to get married, and he had come with his age mates for a blessing from the priest because they were going to raid the Turkana of Kenya for cattle. There's a girl whom he had identified, but they were demanding a very high price of cattle that he did not have. So the only way you could get that girl was to go and raid cattle from the Turkana in Kenya. So if a choir master was doing that, maybe you could see the depth with which this thing may be as a cultural activity or drawn by cultural activity. But what is important is that they were coming to raid cattle from Kenya. The question is, why are our borders porous? Because this crime of cattle rustling is an international crime. It's an organized international crime. People, criminal networks, sometimes use very advanced technologies to track information about where the cattle are, what markets are available, and stuff like that. And so, they're able to move around and get animals and take them to markets, and they sell and dispose of. Secondly, when you look at our laws, you'll find that there's no law requiring identification of cattle or goats or sheep or any of these domestic animals at slaughterhouses and at markets. You'll go to a market and buy and sell an animal with no provisions for the identification of that animal. In my own local area, if you are on a market day, you'll go to the market and buy an animal. There's no requirement for any certification from where the animal came from to that market. They just exchange them the way they sell shirts. I think the time has come for us to come up with a law that will ensure that animals are traceable to their owners. If you are coming to sell an animal, it should be possible to trace the owner of that animal at the point of sale. That one might also help reduce the issue. The other thing I would like to address is that there is a protocol on the prevention, combating, and eradication of cattle rustling in East Africa. The last time I checked, only Uganda had signed that protocol. If you look at the protocol, it provides very, very good measures for containing cattle rustling across the borders, across international borders, and within the borders of a sovereign state like Kenya. So the failure to ratify this kind of thing also tells us that we are not serious with eradicating cattle rustling. And this was a thing that came up from the community and went beyond just the members of the East African community. It's supposed to cover 15 countries in the eastern region where there's rampant cattle rustling. So I would ask myself, how serious is our government, or what is the commitment of our government to ending this menace when they cannot even sign on protocols that are designed to tap into international networks to address this problem? The other question I have, I've always asked myself, Uganda has largely contained cattle rustling through brute force. When somebody picks up a gun to go to another community to rob and kill and spoil, he is not a man to be handled or a woman to be handled with kid gloves, but I doubt whether women are very active in that area, although you have to be gender sensitive. So if somebody picks up a weapon to go and rob, in some country, in Uganda, if we are arrested, you are court-martialed because you are an armed combatant. They don't handle you with the kid gloves. Secondly, the response of the authorities is severe. The monopoly of violence must always stay with the state. I don't understand how the Kenyan state has lost the monopoly of violence in these areas where we have got rampant cattle rustling. The other day I read in the newspaper that, the police air wing helicopters have been grounded because of mismanagement and other things. So we can only the police can only work on land. I would expect the police to be armed with helicopter gunships so that when there is an attack, they go and strafe the area with bullets. The state must maintain the monopoly of violence. But the Kenyan state has chosen to handle this problem with kid gloves. And it would be a situation whereby the elite and maybe people who control the deep state are the people who are behind the cattle rustling. Because how do you steal almost 1,000 cows and nobody sees them? It's practically impossible. I would expect a police air wing or the stock theft to be armed with the attack helicopters. So that when these people take the animals, go and shoot them plus the animals. Do that 2-3 times, they will get scared. But these kid gloves of making the Minister for Interior, giving us pronunciation, trying to give threats through a soprano voice, does not add up. His body language does not even convince you that the man is serious. Let us see action, because lives of Kenyans are being lost, property of Kenyans is being destroyed, and we cannot continue the way we have been continuing. The blame lies squarely at the Kenyan state. It cannot demonstrate any single action it has taken to demonstrate that when you come to violence, we are the masters of violence. I don't see. And unless we get to the point whereby the state has a monopoly of violence, armed gangs will keep roaming around and killing people. We don't want to be Haiti, where the state has lost the monopoly of violence to gangs. And we don't act in time. These so-called cattle rustlers can morph into other things. Because they'll be heavily armed, they can decide to declare a republic of their own within the area. What will we do? Let us nip this thing in the bud. Let us crush and destroy the cattle rustlers. And my proposal is that we should not be talking of setting up funds and whatever. There is already a provision in law for compensation for victims of crime. And so the state should be held accountable to compensate victims of crime. I support the motion, and I call on the Kenyan state to step up to the plate and up its act. I have not seen anything that has been done to fight cattle rustling. The so-called disarmaments end up nowhere. Sometimes they create an imbalance. You disarm one community, you leave another unarmed, and the armed community comes to run roughshod over the community that has been disarmed. So with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you for the opportunity you have given me to address this House, and I support the motion, and I thank Senator Cherargei.
Senator Omtatah, before you leave the floor,
yes, Mr.
I
Speaker,
want to question you. Standing on the 101.3, it shall be out of order to use offensive or insulting language, whether in respect of senators or other persons. So in your contribution, you have stated that a certain individual, a certain citizen of this republic has a soprano voice. So can you kindly withdraw that statement?
It's a statement. It's a statement.
Substantiate whether you are able to.
Mr. Speaker, sir, you can't substantiate the obvious. It's a statement of fact, a descriptive statement of fact. It's not an insult. It's a statement of fact. But if it is offensive, then I withdraw it and apologize.
Proceed and conclude.
So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I've not seen any action that the state has taken other than issuing baseless threats against bandits to restore the balance of arms where the state has the monopoly of violence over criminal gangs. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, sir, I thank you for the opportunity and for the guidance. And I was standing with Senator Cherargei, the Lion of Nandi, for the great input he has given us. I also thank Senator Dulo, the Queen of Isiolo, for the informative information she has given us, and I support the motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
God bless us.
Next is Senator Joe Nyutu, Moranga Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. And I rise to support the motion by Senator Cheptumo, who has just gotten back to the House. Mr. Speaker,